Transparency in the RCMP, please. I know it says that on their website. Whatever else we can say about the RCMP is that they are the most opaque organization you can imagine. Just as an example, does anyone know the type of weapons used by the Nova Scotia serial shooter from Portapique in the spring? We know that most were obtained illegally, they told us that, but we don't know where they came from. We don't know what they were. Why don't we know more? There's no transparency there, but then this is the RCMP. This week, we learned that the RCMP sat on a February 2018 report saying that Canadians didn't have confidence in the leadership of the RCMP. The RCMP paid EKOS Research $74,947 for the report, yet it was only released in the last few days. The RCMP had nothing to say about why that was. I should add, the 2006 Financial Administration Act requires prompt disclosure of taxpayer-funded research within 6 months of completion. Apparently, the RCMP ignored that little piece of something called the law. Could it be because the majority of Canadians lack confidence in the leadership of the National Police Force? I'd bet the farm. And I'm sure the same leadership spent the last 2 years trying to figure out how to spin the numbers to paint the leadership in the best possible light. Canadians deserve better, by any analysis. I'm not talking about confidential investigations. I am talking about things that affect Canadians and that most especially relates to the confidence most Canadians have in the Commissioner of the National Police Force. We know the Commissioner and several other senior officers are under investigation by the OPP for allegations made by 2 members of the YVR4, one of whom served time in jail on a ridiculous conviction, and the other is still serving member who was acquitted at trial. The allegations were investigated internally, and the results did not satisfy the members. The OPP was then called in to provide an independent look at the allegations that were made. This week, we learned that the 2 members were interviewed and the OPP investigation is proceeding apace. But we also learned the specific allegations against the Commissioner of the RCMP, but also 2 former commissioners and several other senior officers, including 2 former commanding officers of V Division, BC. We also learned one of the allegations of obstruction of justice is against the internal investigations from investigators from Alberta, who were initially assigned to look at the allegations against senior leadership. The allegation is, quote, failing to investigate criminal allegations made by the complainants via their correspondence and interviews, unquote. This is acute. Even if you make an allegation and the assigned investigators will not properly investigate, and then they try and cover up for the senior leadership being investigated, there is a problem. The implication of this is deep. There's no way, despite the public statements to the contrary, to hold the leadership of the RCMP accountable. Transparency? Not in this organization. As a former member of the RCMP, I know at first hand how this works. We state a position, but what our real position is, don't do or say anything to bring disrepute onto the force as a whole. It is the unstated position of the RCMP. Do nothing to tarnish the buffalo being at the center of the RCMP logo. Defying any law by the National Police Force is not acceptable, whether it is the 7 findings of non-compliance within the Access of Information or to Information Act by the RCMP, the lack of disclosure of information to Canadians in the worst mass shooting in the country's history, or the breach of the Financial Administration Act, the RCMP have a duty and responsibility to follow the law and be open and transparent to all Canadians. Why do we have laws in a country of laws if our National Police Force can choose which ones to follow or not follow? That should be an absolute. For some reason, it is not obvious to the leadership of the RCMP. For True North, I'm Leo Knight.